Hi, welcome. And today we have Liss Fisette. And I want to ask a question. Can we really get rid of our theory books? Would that even be possible? So, welcome to the channel, Liss. We are going to talk about that. But before I do, I just want to give you a brief introduction. I met Liss on Facebook, where she introduced this controversial topic. And she is in Vancouver Island, British Columbia. She's been there for a while, grew up in that area, went to school, came back. And I loved in her bio where she talks about starting piano lessons, and she says, love at first note. I've never heard anybody say that, and it was just so cool. She started teaching piano at age 16, and she's also taken up flute and singing. She has a Bachelor of Music in piano and a minor in flute, but mostly she's a piano teacher, just like most of us that are watching this video. So, welcome, Liss. Thanks for coming on the channel.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so we're going to give you all of Liss's bio and her stuff in the description. We're going to chat a bit, and please hang with us because we're going to highlight some of Liss's piano games just in a little bit. So hang in there. At the end of the video, there might be something free for you, so please just hang tight about that. So, like I said, Liz and I got acquainted on a Facebook thread, and she asked the question, can we get rid of theory books? It was a little controversial. Liz, can you tell us why you asked that question on Facebook?
Well, I had written a blog post about can we throw away theory books? And the reason that precipitated kind of writing that post was like so many years of teaching where you hand a theory book to a kid, they never open it. And then they come back to lessons and you ask, did you do your theory? And they say no, and they feel bad, and you feel bad. And so in my like experience of doing it, I'm like, there has to be a different way of just handing out a theory book, you know, and saying,
I
hey, can you
mean,
do this during the week?
it is, and some teachers, let's just be fair. Some teachers really feel strongly about keeping the theory book. And if it's working for them, I think that's great. There are some fabulous theory curriculum out there. And the advantage is you have everything kind of laid out in order and you know you're not going to skip into anything. I think the disadvantage is sometimes getting the kids to do it. And one of the other disadvantages is, just they don't learn language that way. They don't go straight to the writing part of language, or we shouldn't. So there seems to be a missing element is there in there. Is that kind of what you were going for with that post?
Yeah, and I do think there is a place for written theory books. Of course, there is, because when you have a student who wants to go to university for music or they're doing conservatory exams, where I am at Royal Conservatory, then they definitely need that theory. And what you said about age is true. Like, I would never give a theory book to a 5-year-old, particularly. But as they get older, if that's what they're choosing to do, and they want to do conservatory and they want to do the exams, I absolutely do written theory books because that is the easiest way to do it. But my experience with my students is I've kind of become the teacher of kids who want to do alternative things. And so they're not here looking to become a concert pianist. They don't want to do conservatory. So my job is to put all that theory knowledge into their heads and their brains and their playing without opening a theory book, usually.
Yeah, and so we're going to get in more. We're going to dive deep into how that is even possible because I admit a few years ago I heard this idea and I was like, "What? How would I do it? How do I do it?" So we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we get to all of that, can you just tell us what is it like on a typical teaching or work day in your life?
Well, my daughter is 10 and my son is 7. And for the most part, they are homeschooled. They go to a hybrid program where they're in school 1.5 days a week, and the rest of the time they're home with me. So my day involves getting up, getting kids fed, and we also have two dogs and two cats. So then we go out we live right across the street from the river in the forest. So we grab our dogs, we're out for a walk, we're back, and then it's school time. So I spend my morning teaching them. And then after lunch, it's kind of our downtime or friend time. And then I go to teach usually around like 2:30, 3 o'clock until after dinner. And so when I'm teaching, with almost all of my students, there is never a lesson that I do that doesn't involve off the bench activities. So although we play, we also sit on the ground and we play theory games or for whatever they're working on in that moment. Or we're doing an improv or we're doing a composition. I try to be intuitive when I'm teaching. And so I'm looking really to hear what the student is doing, see where they're at, where their self-regulation is, how they're feeling in that moment, and then taking that and then going, okay, this kid needs to stop right now, do different activity, which is where all the off-bench activities really come in handy, right? Is to be able to jump off the bench and do that. And I do that with almost all ages of the kids that I teach, even adults, because everybody learns better when they're having fun, right? And we all have those moments where your brain like shuts off because it's done doing whatever it's doing. And so I think part of being a teacher is just to have that intuition of when somebody needs what they need in that moment and being able to change over your idea. And sometimes I think what happens is people have been teaching in one way for so long that the thought of switching can be challenging. And our society in general thinks of learning in kind of a very linear way where it's all visual and it's all in a book, and that isn't the way a lot of people learn. And so we have to really learn to be flexible. We have to learn to change our viewpoint around how we're doing things so that we can help all kids learn instead of having the kids who fall through the cracks and don't come back for their lessons.
Yeah, it's such a fresh approach and such a no nonsense kind of common sense approach. And it's such a neat thing that we as teachers of an instrument, whether it's piano or something else, whether it's group or individual, we have the opportunity to just go with what our students need, and that's just such a cool thing. So you're teaching 2:30 or 3. What are your kids doing while you're working?
My husband is a nurse. So he does 12-hour shifts, either days or nights. And so often if he's working night shifts, then he's with the kids. He finishes, I finish, he goes to work kind of thing. And then we're very blessed to have both of our moms really close by. And so they have always been our childcare. So that makes life a lot easier. Yeah.
I'm a grandma and I am doing that now for my little ones. They're age 3 and just turned 9 months, and it is a
Yeah.
blast. So
Yeah.
it's so cool. And then, so you have a long, very busy day. Whew,
I
you
do. Yeah.
probably hit the pillow tired, I am sure. That is so cool. So you have made a lot of resources for beginners.
Yeah.
Um, Finger numbers, rhythms, note names. What got you started creating these resources?
Let's see, when my daughter was born, about 10 years ago, I started to do a lot of research online because I wasn't happy with the traditional way of teaching. I don't want to think even about how many hours I have spent finding the things that I use and the things that I love. So it involved this slow, deep dive into online printable resources. I started for a while, I did like the practice packages. So kids had binders like with all the things in them so they could take them home. But again, that doesn't work awesome because kids don't necessarily open them up when they get home.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like a progression of finding these great people who make these good resources and then printing them out and using them in lessons. And then it slowly changed over my life. And then when I was 16 and I was teaching really young kids, I would even like draw out there were computer things back then that you could use. So I would draw out my own resources, and it was always something I was really interested in. And then what happened for me a lot is that I would find games And a lot of them I really loved, but I would often find a lack too of what I really wanted in a game.
Mm.
And I come from a very creative family. My mom is a portrait artist, and my life involved a lot of creating all the time. And so it's something that I love to do. And I was fairly certain that if I started making games, I would really like it. And then I would always have available to me the games that I wanted that were covering the things in the way that I wanted to cover them.
Yeah, I totally relate. During pandemic, that was me. I was like, some of these things are great, but there were things that my studio needed. So it's great. You solved your problem. And then when did you start putting your resources for sale for other teachers?
It was not very long ago. It was just in right before Easter this last year.
Okay.
Yeah, I really, I don't know, have a lot of resources that I've made. I kind of got a little obsessive there, but I think there'd been so many things in my brain for so long and I could finally get them out. So yeah, that's what
Very
I've been.
good. And we'll be talking at the end of this video about where you can find all of those goodies. And I would say that when I saw your store, I was super impressed. You've got the Teachers Pay Teachers and your website, and everything seems really geared that for a specific thing. So if a teacher's looking for something very specific, they can find it there, and your prices are super teacher friendly. So that
Yeah.
is just wonderful.
And
Um,
my goal with resources is that like when I'm teaching and you open your page of your book and it's like, well, we're learning finger numbers, then I want a game that's just finger numbers. Or even like with keyboard games, like teach the all the games for finding letters on the keyboard tend to be all the letters at once, which I find doesn't work. Nobody teaches that way, right? They do CDE first, right? and
right.
then and then the book. So I like to have, if I'm using a lesson book or whatever, a game for every concept as it comes up in the lesson book, because for me that's what reinforces, right, is to break it down to that lowest common denominator and be able to pull out a game for everything so that you're
Makes
got that knowledge going.
And then you have it, like you said, and you can use it year after year because we're always going to have beginners. Where they all need to learn certain things, and usually in a certain order. And learning is not linear; it's spiral. So sometimes we can use it to introduce, but often we have to go back and review or reinforce. And so a game is just perfect for that. So
Yes.
you create for piano, but you also play flute and sing. So what is your favorite?
It's still piano. I actually never wanted to be a flute player. I was super shy as a kid, and I remember them having the band night and where they show you different instruments. And my best friend was playing a flute, and they stuck a flute up under my mouth, and I didn't want to say anything because I really wanted to actually play the saxophone, not the flute.
Oh man.
But I mean, I do love my flute. It is a beautiful instrument, and I still teach quite a bit of flute on and off. I used to teach singing as well, but it was just, I don't know. I love to sing. I don't love to teach it. It's a lot harder to teach something that's inside your body
Yes.
than it is on piano where everything is outside. It's easy to go, oh, your wrist is like this, do this,
Right, right. Yeah. I find the same thing. It's neat that you have had a journey through a lot of musical experiences, but you've kind of honed in on what feeds your soul, what you're good at. And
Yeah.
you've figured that out. So that's cool. So what is your most popular game or resource so far?
Um, It's actually been a bingo game, one of the first ones I made. And I think it's because I did it in the way that I want things to be, which is the bingo game does CDE and that's it on one board, and FGAB and that's it on the other board. And it also has a dice with the CDE, and which can be used for other things, right, in the FGAB. So that one's been really popular, which I'll show. I'll show that one in a bit.
Cool.
So that one, it's very simple, but because I split it up in a different way than what other people do, I think that's why that one's been popular.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So you have had, I think, a very successful career. You've got these children, you're homeschooling. How do you balance all that out? I guess we talked about that a little bit with your normal day, but do you find it hard? Do you find anything about your career? Can you remember a time when it was hard? And could you share about that?
Yeah, having homeschool kids is challenging. And I honestly am still figuring out what works. I also have OCD. So dealing with my mental health at moments can be challenging, along with having my children and then my work. So we're still working on finding that balance that works really well. And it gets better and better all the time. For me, definitely the hardest part of teaching, the hardest moment was suddenly going online at the beginning of the pandemic.
Hmm.
I still don't honestly feel like I have recovered from having to do that. And added in there is the fact that my husband is a nurse and works on a respiratory ward. So thankfully, we're in a smaller place and we never had very much COVID in our hospital here. So it was fairly safe. But it was terrifying because we had no idea what was going to happen. And then I had an 8-year-old and a 5-year-old at that time. And for 7 weeks, when we weren't supposed to see anybody, my 8-year-old took care of my 5-year-old while I would teach for a couple hours at a time. And I said to my husband, I was like, you have to deal with a pandemic, but I just had to relearn how to do my entire job.
I know. It was such a moment. Um, but it gave us such opportunity, even though
It
there was
did.
hard things, but to stay connected. I don't know if you felt this, but to stay connected to these children in my studio and to be able to be that stable person in their life, and to give them music. And my kids actually did better in the quarter after the pandemic than they did the previous quarter. They learned
Yeah.
more, and they did great. So there were a lot of positives, but it is a big learning curve for a lot of people. And sometimes I think we don't give ourselves enough credit for how great we as music teachers did. I'm completely online now, which wouldn't even have been possible for me a few years ago. But there's so many resources now, and it's gotten so much easier because we had to go through
True.
that. We have a lot more help.
It's true.
So
And I'm so thankful for the skills, but the actual being in it was awful.
it's hard. It's hard. And to have a semblance of normalcy again is such a gift, isn't it?
It is. And I have been back in person in my studio since September 2020.
Oh,
And
good.
so that's been good. I have my studio is separate from my house with its own entrance and waiting room and kind of stuff. So that makes it easier.
Oh, sweet. That is a
Yeah.
sweet setup. Love that. Love that. That way you can just close the door and leave it behind. That is the perfect scenario. So, all right. Well, let's get back into this ditching our theory books real quick. But because you guys have hung with us and you've made it this far in the video, you're in for a treat. We're going to have Liz preview some of her games for us. So if you've made it this far, I want you to type music in the comments, MUSIC, and let us know what kind of games you're looking for. Because often as creators, we're creating what we need for our studios, but it would be so cool to know what you guys think and your perspective. So if you are a teacher or a parent and you are here, you've made it this far, type MUSIC and then tell us if there's, just say hi, or tell us if you have any kind of idea, note names or keys or rhythm. What is it? What is it that you want to see more of? We would love that. So you mentioned this before, Liz. If we're not going to do theory books and we're going to go with how kids learn, what does that look like in your studio? You mentioned off bench time, but do you plan certain games? Do you have certain games like out and ready to go? How do you do it without a theory book?
I do usually, and if I'll turn you here this way, you can see my theory game wall.
Ooh.
So I have it organized so that it is very easy for me to grab whatever I need in the moment. But often I know ahead of time, and so I do pull out games. Sometimes I go like I have a week where I do rhythm and I do ear training, and then the next week I will do note games and sight reading. And I find those things kind of keep me going on like the track of where I want to be with kids. So that's helpful. But like I said, I have them so organized that I can grab out a game if from like I've forgotten, oh, we're going to be on this concept now, let's grab that out. Or you had trouble with this, let's grab that out. But I know like which students are, say, struggling with note reading, which is such a common issue. Then I'm going to pull out the games I know that I'm going to use for note reading. I'm going to play the game and then I'm going to reinforce the game in the music. So like playing a game where you're doing landmark notes, like you're doing middle C, you're doing treble G, and you're doing bass F. And so I have a number of games that just use those notes. So I would play the game and then we would go back to the music and we would find all of those notes in the music, right? So activating as many senses as you possibly can when you're teaching something is really key, right? Because we have learners who learn in so many different ways. Like my own kids are right brain learners, which means that they learn in the opposite direction of other learners. So when they learn to read, they have to learn sight words first and phonics last. And a lot of kids are like that, right? So not everything works for every kid. And so being able to engage as many senses as possible is really what we're looking for. So if you're going to do rhythms, play them on the piano, stomp them, clap them, sing them, say them, so that you activated every sense when you're doing it. Then you know that you're covering all your bases, especially when you don't know a student really well yet and you haven't figured out what their learning style is or what works for them or what they're struggling with. Then doing those kind of activities where you activate everything at once, those are the things that are going to really get someone learning, right?
That's so key. And I love that mentality, but also that you've got everything kind of at your fingertips. So
Yeah.
you have all everything on your wall that you could need, and then you kind of think in your mind what you predict you're going to need. But if something goes different, you're ready for it. So I think that's really, really great. Well, I'm going to take myself off of this and spotlight you and let you share a game.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to show first this game that I made for the very first lesson in piano. So again, this is an engage all your senses game. So I went for a West Coast theme because of course I live on the West Coast. So I wanted something mountainy and oceany when I was doing it. So this is a game board that you put together. So there's the first half of the game board. There's the second half. And so then you would play this game sitting at the piano. And so the cards are loud, soft, long, short, and then where's the other ones? Low, high, two groups, and three groups. So when you're playing this game, you would have your game pieces on the board, and then every time you land, you pick up a card, and you either play a low note, a high note, a long note, a short note, a two group, a three group. So we're reinforcing all of those like things that we teach in the very beginning of a lesson within a game format.
That is so cool. I can envision too that you could use this with ear training where you as the teacher play one and then they have to guess was that low
Yes. And
high.
I do have matching ear training paddles for this for free on my Teachers Pay Teachers store.
Perfect.
And there's two sets of there's an ear training paddles and there's a set of theory pages and both of those are free that you can get along with the game.
Excellent. What I love
And
about this is that it hits the skills that often we as teachers skip. These are the same skills that were in our kindergarten public school curriculum. When I was a public school music teacher, we had to hit all of these skills. And it's amazing how many kindergartners don't know this stuff. They don't.
yes.
So, and then
Yeah.
you're relating it to an instrument, which is even better.
And
That's
I think that teachers can get really stuck too in the beginning of lessons of really wanting to uh, get right to note reading. Like that seems to be people's goals is, that beginner book goes straight to. And I used to find beginner lessons so stressful because it was like, oh my goodness, you had to teach finger numbers and you had to teach rhythm and you had to teach them where they went on the piano and then you had to teach them the proper technique and you had to teach them the hand position. And by the end of the lesson, I would feel like I was hyperventilating, you
mm.
know? And so I don't do any of that anymore. I focus on those things. I only teach rote pieces for the first month or so. I don't worry about those things anymore. And I teach every concept before I do it on the page. So if I know finger numbers are coming, I play finger number games for a few weeks before we play with finger numbers. If I know alphabet's coming, we play CDE and FGAB games for a month before I ever do the alphabet. To me, that is successful.
Yes, yes, that's so smart. So smart. Okay,
Yeah.
do you have something else you can show us?
Yes. So this is one of my the little kid favorites. This is called Dinosaur Rhythm Stomp.
Oh, it's so adorable.
Yeah. So here's the game board. So you put your game pieces at the beginning and you roll on your turn, and then you get a rhythm card and you stomp out the rhythm card like you're a dinosaur.
Oh, so cute. And what ages do you use this game with? You recommending?
Probably from like whatever your youngest kid is up to like 8 or 9. They all really like it. Who
Well,
doesn't want to stomp like a dinosaur, right? And then there's a few cards in here like get chased by a T-Rex, go back 2 spaces and stuff that keeps the game going a little longer.
yeah,
Um, yeah,
yeah,
so that one's been really quite popular with the little kids.
cute,
And
cute. Do you have
yeah,
anything else? I asked her to share too. There's so
I'm gonna share this one for like older kids. So this is my interval intrusion game. So
ooh,
this one is kind of like a mystery themed one. And so you shuffle these up and each player gets a strip, like your clue card. And then you pick up and name the intervals and you put a token over every interval on your card. Whoever gets all their tokens on their investigation card first wins.
ooh. So it's kind of a variation on bingo in a
It
way.
is a variation on bingo. Yeah, because I get tired of the regular bingo.
Yeah, interval intrusion. Love it. So, yeah, you take a lot of simple concepts, but these are the things that we really need, to be going over many, many
Yeah,
times. So, that's right.
exactly.
So, that's
And
so
this is the CDE bingo I was chatting about. So in this one, it's as you can see, very simple. I only do FGAB on one page and then CDE on another page. And there's black and white and color versions of this. Because this is how I teach letters on the keyboard. I never ever teach them in one go. I teach them in a visual pattern. So it's which ones are under the 2 group, which ones are under the 3 group. To me, that's the most successful way of teaching that. And then it comes with the dice. And now the awesome thing about having these dice along with this game is that you can play keyboard races. So you take 2 game pieces and you put them at the bottom of the piano, and then you do your CDE dice and you race up the CDEs all the way to the top of the piano, and whoever gets there first wins.
Oh, and I love that your dice only has either CDE or FGAB.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And when I've chatted with people who have this one, that's their thing. It's like, oh, the dice is so great. And then I'm going to show you my twist on a theory book.
Oh, all right. I'm excited to see this one.
So this is my Musicianary. Let's see.
Ooh.
All right. So I like more like holistic learning that involves, again, more senses, right? With kids. So instead of having a theory book where you answer questions, what this one is it's like the kids having their own musical storybook or information book. So what they do is in a lesson, every time you have a new concept, these are the pages, and there's color and black and white. And I also have a doodle version if the kids don't like comic book versions. So what you would do is when you learn finger numbers, the kid's going to write their finger numbers into those hands. They're going to write letters on the keyboard. If they learned a quarter note, they're going to write that in there. And then what you can do is they can take this home and they can read it to their mom and dad. Or in a lesson, you can ask them to be the teacher, flip to a page, say to get them to explain a term and see if you can figure out what it is. So it's more of a gives the power to them to do and learn rather than having a teacher tell them what to do. And of course the fun themes help, right?
Yeah, it's like a journal where
Yes.
you've learned it and then you're kind of just in a way showing off or notating or drawing a picture of something that you've learned and kind of as a keepsake. Maybe you could maybe even call it a musical scrapbook of sorts.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. And so and in the, how to use part in it, there's all these different ideas on how to use it in a lesson or use it at home, and parents can grab it out and use it as a storybook. But I always like putting power in kids' hands. And I think the more they have power over things on their own life and what they're doing, the better they do. So that's what I like about it. But I am working on a silly theory book right now. So stuff like, here's these bunch of superheroes on this page. Cut out your superheroes. Can you fly them to the high part on the piano? Can you fly them to the low part on the piano? Those kind of things. So it's an interactive book, with theory concepts in it. So that's my current project that's going to take me a little bit of time.
I love that idea. How fun. People that have young children in piano, or if you're teaching young kids, this is for you guys. I mean, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Liz has done the work for you and really thought through it. And why not give it a whirl? What would you say to teachers who are maybe like have not done off bench? There are still some folks around there that are not quite sure about it. What would you say if they were thinking about getting started?
I think it's good to be okay with yourself as a teacher. Like, we need teachers who are just going to teach Royal Conservatory and they're just going to teach those kids who want to do exams. Like, we need people like that, but that it's okay to do kind of one different thing at a time, but you don't have to do everything all at once. I mean, I've spent like 10 years relearning like how to teach chording and improv and lead sheets and how to use these games and resources. It's been a very long haul and something that I felt so passionately about that I put all this time into it. But it's okay as a teacher to go, oh, I have this one student who's struggling. One game might help, and just start with one game, right? Like the one thing at a time. It's totally fine.
Good advice. Okay, we are almost done. So we're going to do a little fun lightning round that I like to do with my guests. So are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. Coffee or tea?
Tea 100%.
What kind of
I
tea?
don't drink coffee.
What kind of tea do you drink?
Earl Grey usually, or green tea.
All right. Sweet or salty?
Sweet.
Sweet. That's good. That's me. Classical or jazz?
Classical.
All right. Best teacher you ever had?
Sean Mooney, the teacher I had before I went to university.
Was Sean a piano teacher?
He was, yeah. And he transformed my playing. I had gotten chronic tendonitis from not having the best instruction. And he retaught me everything and gave me the skills I needed to go to university and do music.
What a gift. That is so cool. Do you have a favorite brand of piano?
I'm pretty like traditional. I like Yamahas.
Yamahas, you cannot go wrong. Do you have a fun or impactful musical memory in your past?
Musical memory. I mean, I very vividly remember my first, like I said, love at first note. Like, it was very true for me. Everybody in the neighborhood, we lived in Manitoba. My family's all from Manitoba. And when the economy crashed here in the 80s, we were living in Victoria. And when I was 8 till when I was 13, we moved back to Winnipeg. And everybody in the neighborhood there played piano. They were forced to play piano. And I said to my mom, I was like, I want to do that. And so I went to my first piano lesson when I was like 11. And I didn't sleep the whole night after that.
Wow.
All I could think about was playing.
Wow. So cool.
Yeah.
Did you have a piano in your house or did that
We
come?
had a keyboard for a few weeks till my mom realized that I really needed, I really wanted like that. She just got me a piano. And for that, I'm thankful because not all parents would listen and do those things. And that's the reason I, have what I have right now.
That is so, so cool. That is cool. You've kind of already hinted about this, but your next project is going to be, do you have a title for it yet? It's going to be this silly.
I think I'm going to call it the Silly Theory book. Yeah, because I don't want it to be at all traditional. Every page of it will be interactive.
Yeah.
So, like I said, the superheroes flying up to high or low. I have an activity for 2 groups and 3 groups where you cut out the emoji faces and you put them on all the 2 groups. And then as you play the 2 groups, you have to try to make the emoji face while you play them, things like that.
That will be so fun. Is it going to be in digital form? Is it
It
going to,
will be in digital form. Yeah.
that is so nice for teachers to have because you can just grab it online. You can download it, print it when you
Yeah.
need it.
Yeah.
It's super
Yeah,
cool.
I personally do not like having to order hard copies of things, so I like keeping everything digital.
It's simple and it's then you don't have as much, we all have a lot of music, but having those resources where, they're on your computer is just so wonderful. Okay, well, thank you for being with us today. If you have made it this far in the video, we have a free gift for you, a freebie for you. And you may have remembered the My Musicianary, I hope I said that right, book that Liss is making. And so can you tell us, if we've made it this far, how can we grab that free gift?
So if you mention this video and email me, I will send you the PDF of the My Musictionary.
Cool. And where can we find your email?
In the comments?
Okay, yeah, we'll put it in the comments. It's going to be lissajoymusic at outlook.com. Lissa, Lissa, joy music at outlook.com. So if you didn't get that and you're listening to it, if you're in the car listening to YouTube, like I do sometimes, you can go, it'll be in the description or the comments. Just grab that. You're also going to want to go to the YouTube description here because we have the link to the Teachers Pay Teachers store for Liss, and we have her website as well. So thank you so much it has been such a joy to meet a teacher that's, thinks like I do, but also not just that, but you also have some things that have given me some things to think about, really separating things down to the lowest common denominator. So thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you for having me. It was lots of fun.